What's up? Peace and love to everybody. Welcome back. Sunday. It's a little bit cold. Beautiful though. I love doing the videos out here. We got the energy from the birds. It's beautiful. So, lately we've been hearing this new phrase called toxic masculinity. And it's the new buzz. It's the new buzz phrase of the moment. So, I thought it would be good for us to take a good look at this toxic masculinity. And the question comes up, are the scriptures to blame for toxic masculinity? So let's take a deeper look. Most of the things that we deal with in life come back to the Bible, whether people believe that or not. If you sue somebody and you end up in court, you will have to swear on a Bible. So there's something about the scriptures that are an integral part of our reality. So I'm going to share a couple scriptures here. And first, I should say, when it comes to masculinity, I've always been a guy that believes that men should embrace their masculinity and that women should embrace their femininity, and that that's something that we should be proud of and happy for. But the concept of toxic masculinity is basically that some of these masculine traits that men have, and even some women have become detrimental to society, and in many ways detrimental to women. Women are over-sexualized, women are abused, and men dominate many aspects of culture, especially religion and spirituality. So there's a tension that's been drawn to this toxic side of masculinity. So, to a few scriptures, if I may. First one I'm going to share is from the book of Timothy. 1 Timothy 2:12 says, "But I suffer not a woman to teach, nor to usurp authority over the man, but to be silent. For Adam was first formed, then Eve. And Adam was not deceived, but the woman being deceived was in transgression." Okay, so let's look at another one. Let's look at, that was Timothy. Let's look at Corinthians. 1 Corinthians, where are we here? 1 Corinthians 14. 1 Corinthians 14:34 says, "Let your woman keep silent in the churches, for it is not permitted unto them to speak, but they are commanded to be under obeisance, as also saith the law. And if they will learn anything, let them ask their husband at home, for it is a shame for a woman to speak in church." So, just from these two scriptures, we can see that there's definitely some thoughts in the Bible that are slightly negative when it comes to women. Now, for me, I got a daughter now, so I've really had to open up my mind to the concept of this toxic masculinity and be honest about it. Now, we know when we look at the scriptures, when we start at the beginning, we hear the story. The woman's deceived. The woman eats the fruit. And then her husband eats the fruit. So right from the jump, there's an idea that is put in place that suggests that women are a problem to some degree. Or that women, it says that the woman will be placed at enmity with the man. And so there's a degree of responsibility for sin placed on women. Now, we look at this concept of toxic masculinity, and then we look at the church or religion and spirituality. And what do we see? Well, we see that to some degree, as time goes on and as we evolve, many of these ideas, like what we just talked about here from Paul, are looked down upon, even by the church. many preachers and pastors realize that this is problematic to be suggesting that women are to stay silent or that women are the cause of sin. And so, to some degree, those ideas are changed. But on a greater scale, they're not. And when we look at religion today, when we look at spirituality, we see that indeed women are subjected to a lower place. And it's not just one religion. And I'll give you an example. Growing up as a witness, we have we had a very, very popular preacher called Samuel Hurd. And he made a comment that women are built differently than men. Their skulls are not the same size as men. So therefore, they're just not built for headship in the home. Now, here's the problem. For me, a guy who was raised by a single mother, that's problematic, because what is a statement like that telling a woman who's obligated to be the head of the home because there's no man around, right? Even those scriptures that we read in Timothy, if you research Timothy, he was raised by his single mother and grandmother. So what kind of ideas are scriptures like this and preachers who are carrying forth this idea of chauvinistic characteristics being pushed onto women? What kind of ideas are these telling our young women, our daughters, our mothers? So the question of, are the scriptures responsible for toxic masculinity, comes down to this simple answer: your perception is your reality. Or to put it simply, seeing is believing. So how you see the scriptures, how you perceive the scriptures, will determine whether or not the scriptures are responsible for toxic masculinity or not. And when we look at a lot of these churches, organizations, spiritually and otherwise, we see that their perception of the Bible, their interpretation of the Bible, is literal to the word. And so if you approach it literally, then you have no choice but to accept the fact that there's toxic ideas, toxic masculine ideas that are pushed forth onto women throughout the whole Bible. Even in Revelation, it talks about the wild beast of false religion being compared to a whore. We have these stories, Samson and Delilah, right? We have these stories of women throughout the Bible who are looked down on. But here's the other side to this. And this is why this video is not titled, "Is the Bible responsible for toxic masculinity?" It's titled, "Are the scriptures responsible for toxic masculinity?" Because the Bible is a big book, and within it, there are many other books. And when you start to analyze the scriptures deeper, for example, even that very first story where the serpent tempts Eve and she bites that fruit and then she gives it to her husband and he bites the fruit. He had a choice. He made the choice to take that. So is it really 100% the woman's fault? Can we sit here and put all of the blame of sin on women, even if you do believe in the Bible to some degree literally? I say no. And there's many other stories throughout the Bible as you examine it. For example, the story of Rahab. Here's a woman who is a prostitute in the city of Jericho, according to the scriptures. And yet, she does this amazing thing by saving these spies. And she ends up being essentially a hero in the scriptures. We have the stories of Christ, of Yeshua, Jesus, spending his time with a prostitute. So clearly, he didn't draw that judgment like others do, right? So for me, I look at the scriptures as this. I say the Bible is historical, allegorical, fanciful, and mystical. And that's how I approach it. I don't approach it literally, word for word. So for me, the scriptures are not a cause for toxic masculinity. And so At the end of the day, this is what it comes down to. How do you perceive the scriptures? How do you put the scriptures into practice in your life? And there's no doubt that many people are approaching the scriptures the wrong way, and it's leading us towards these issues like toxic masculinity, which is a real thing, just like toxic femininity is a real thing. So these are my thoughts for today. I hope it can bring some greater insight into this whole hot new topic of toxic masculinity. I strongly still believe that as men, we should embrace who we are as men, be masculine, but that doesn't mean that we need to be abusive, and it also doesn't mean that we need to follow along with scriptural ideas that are not in line with the values of love. That doesn't mean that the Bible's a bad book, doesn't mean that it's not useful, doesn't mean that we can't follow along with the ideas in the scriptures that are in line with love, but we should never be afraid to think critically. So these are my thoughts on this beautiful Sunday. Hope everyone's staying blessed. Peace and love. Like, subscribe. Until next time, peace.